Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and berries, welcome to SynergyCafe here at the World Nerve Center headquarters of your Authentic Reflection Studio.
What's up?
What's up?
Yeah,
How you doing today, Casey Peak?
doing great. A little tired. My kid's been having a cough, and and I worked a very long 12-hour shift yesterday.
That'll do it. 12 hours?
Yeah,
That's 2 days.
it's a lot. Yeah,
It is. Why did you do that?
because
heck,
it's
why
nice to
not?
have extra ka-ching in your pocket.
That'll do it. You gotta have coins to make it ka-ching.
Right. I don't have coins. It's more like a.
So if you haven't noticed, we don't have a topic yet today, but we're gonna arrive on one. What was the one that you suggested?
Gut biome and gut flora.
Gut flora. That sounds like a vegetarian thing.
Not a vegetarian thing. It's
Flora
all the
and fauna.
microorganisms, all the fauna. Yep, all the gut organisms that live in there that help you digest your food, and how it affects mental health.
How does it affect mental health?
So if you end up with a biological imbalance of the gut flora in your stomach, you end up being way more likely to develop certain problems because it changes how you think, because it changes how your body takes in nutrients, it changes how your body functions overall, the types of food that you crave, everything, and it ends up changing the neural pathways themselves. So you end up with certain issues down the road. So there's a lady that I work with, for me and my family. She runs Lith Wellness in Minnesota. She's actually quite famous as a muscle tester, but also as a nutritionist. And in the area, I shouldn't say quite famous. In the area, she is though. And people actually drive multiple states to come see her. So they drive quite far to make an appointment with her just to be able to get things like gut microbes, microbiome
So how
taken care of.
How do they find out if something's wrong inside of there?
Well, the
Your gut.
research that's currently being done takes stool samples and things like that in order to see what the gut flora is made up of. And there is a certain thing that they're starting to do in order to help people who have really off gut flora, where they're taking people who have really healthy guts and really healthy dispositions in their minds and everything else. And they actually are doing, it's kind of gross, but they're doing
Bring it on.
They're doing what's called a fecal transplant. So basically they take some of the fecal matter that is from a healthy person and they're putting it in the bowels of the person who has the unhealthy gut flora. It's so basically it's putting all of that healthy flora into your gut, and it's making your gut start to function better.
Now it seems like they're putting the cart in front of the horse, so to speak.
Well, it is the stuff that comes out of the back end being moved further up.
Well, so where's the gut? Isn't that more the bottom of the stomach?
Well, so old school thought is that we as humans have all of our consciousness, everything is all because of the mind, right? Now, if you go by Eastern medicine, it's mind, body, spirit, right? And they take this mind, body, spirit, but really it's still big emphasis on the mind. That's changing. It's been in the flux of being changed for about 30 years now. And I would say we're now at the critical mass where we're about to see a flip. It's about to go on its head. So if you think of mana wars, right? The not the like tank looking things, right?
The
Man-o-war.
jellyfish.
We're talking about the jellyfish
The
looking
Portuguese
thing.
man-o-war.
Portuguese man-o-war, exactly. Now, the Portuguese man-o-war is a perfect example of a multi-organism creature. It's a bunch of different organisms that all work together in order to make this thing alive, right? Humans are just like that. It's just that we're built of fungi and microbiome, which is all a bunch of bacteria and fungus and various different growth things that are inside of us. We have a whole lot of stuff that's growing and going on in there that end up making up who we are. So one of the things that they have found is that if your microbiome is off, if your gut flora is off, what can happen is that you end up being like almost 2 times as likely to be able to develop things like ADHD or what was the other one? Depression. So they're showing a link with depression. They're showing a link with certain genetic factors that's in there. And they were wondering if it's a genetic factor that's developing after the point or if it's developing before the point. It's the MTHFR. So if anybody wants to look up that, it's really easy to remember. It's MTHFR, which is, sounds like motherfucker. But it is. It's true. Like, hey, it's online. I can swear. But
You did swear.
I did. Yeah. So, but it's anyhow. That's how I remember it. So I call it the gene. So it's the MTHFR gene. And that particular gene changes the way that your body methylates. Now, it's funny because they're looking at cannabis, how it changes the way that your body methylates. They look at caffeine, how it changes the way your body methylates. They look at, they look at tobacco and how it changes the way that your body methylates. So anything you intake can change the way that your body methylates too. So as we're talking about the gut biome, right? Let's bring this together here. So if the things that you take in can change the way that your body acts and reacts to certain things, and it actually can change some of your genetic markers and your genetic makeup, it stands to reason it can affect your brain. It's new. It's new research and it's new stuff that's going on. It's a concept that's been out there for a very long time. I mean, you can go back to the 1960s and find people who have this concept. If you go with Ayurvedic medicine or different things like that, like Chinese medicine, they talk about imbalances. And if you go all the way back, they talk about the imbalances of the humors. And they, things like that. And they actually talk about how it lives in the blood and it's like lives in the body and how they would change like the way that you eat and stuff like that, thinking it would fix you. They weren't completely wrong. The thing is, though, is that once your gut biome gets imbalanced, you have to do something radical to bring it back into balance. So, for example, people in Tibet live the longest. In this very specific region of Tibet, right? They were the longest lived people in the entire world. Of course, then we had the Chinese took over the area. Their diet completely changed. The way that people lived there completely changed. So what was different? Well, the people who lived there for a very long time lived on a diet of yogurt and yak cheese. Yak cheese is extremely high in protein, and it is a fermented cheese. And yogurt, of course, is fermented. So the yogurt is inoculated with a bunch of things that live in our guts. So we take it and we eat that, and it makes our guts get completely filled with this healthy gut flora. And it's helping them live like a very long time. I think the average at the point where they did this study back in like the 90s, or was it early 2000s? I think the average person there was living to be like 95, the average male. The males, it's interesting. It's the only place on the planet where the males regularly lived longer than the females.
So do you think that all of this stuff can kind of go the other way, where it actually starts in the mind and what a person thinks about? That could alter the gut.
I don't think so in this particular case, because I think that yeah, I'll put it like this. So I believe that sometimes what we're thinking isn't necessarily a thought that's our own. So like, let's go with certain forms of meditation in Buddhism, right? And whenever you're doing certain forms of meditation, like Zen meditation, for example, that's a great one. When you're doing Zen meditation and you recognize the thoughts that are coming through, but then you're supposed to just acknowledge them and let them go. But part of the idea is that all the thoughts that pass through our head are not necessarily ours. It's like we're standing in the river of time. We're standing in this river of human consciousness, and the consciousness is flowing past us. And just because a thought comes up doesn't even necessarily mean that it's our own. I believe that we have thoughts that pass through us that are not necessarily our thoughts. And I believe that a lot of those thoughts are because of our gut flora, such as cravings. We have cravings, we have foods that we want to take, but then there's other things too, like our ability to be able to focus, right? So if it affects ADHD dramatically, and we know it does, because give your child red dye, if you don't believe me, and watch how quickly they start acting like an ADD child. Seriously, just cut the red dye and you find out very quickly. And the yellow dyes end up dropping all your zinc, right? So, but the red dye actually affects the way that your children behave, like very rapidly. So if you have this red dye that can do that to you and can affect you in that way, then that tells me that what's going on here is developing into what we relate to as consciousness.
I can see how that could do that too, but I also believe in intention, not necessarily just a thought comes in, then you just accept that thought, but actually intending what that thought is inside of your mind or your consciousness. So a ritual for me, when I take a shower, I'm being baptized and I'm being purified of anything that's negative and unhealthy and no longer serves me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a very similar ritual.
Everything that comes in is there to help me with an abundant and happy and healthy lifestyle. And when I void, I am releasing and purging anything that is no longer serving me.
Yeah.
So my mind is doing that. And it's not just my brain mind, it's my head, my heart, and my being.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that perhaps that could be healthy too. I mean, the people you talked about, the people in Tibet, they're not sitting there at a red light and someone's giving them the finger. They're out
probably
in nature.
Now.
Maybe
they
now.
Probably are now.
Well, it's probably, but you weren't referring to now when you were talking
I
about
was
that.
referring to Tibet before
hundreds of years ago.
China started throwing all of the dredges of society in the middle of there.
So that just going back to that time frame.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is your environment of where you put yourself.
That is a big part of it, and that is one of the reasons why people are looking at this right now. We in Western culture are inundated with far more poisons and toxins and things that are like that, processed foods. I mean, seriously, everybody knows this by now, but I'm going to mention it anyways because I am positive there's going to be somebody out there that's going to go, no, this isn't true. Go buy a McDonald's cheeseburger, right? Set the freaking cheeseburger down and watch how quickly even the ants avoid it. Like nothing will touch it. Nothing will eat it. And we're being fed this. Well,
you're not being fed this. You're actually making the purchase yourself.
Correct. And no, what I mean is that they're putting things like this for human consumption.
Yeah.
And it's going out there. It's being put as though it's for human consumption.
So when I'm eating something like that,
nothing will eat it.
My friend that recently passed, Patrick Weisman, we'd go over to the Taste of India a lot and have their buffet. And he always would stop and do a prayer, and he put energy into the food. And what he's doing is he's blessing the food, putting in positive energy. So if there is something like that this place bought that was preservatives in it, he's nullifying that with his intention and his direct connection with all that is. That's a different story.
That is really interesting. So they did a test on prayer and food. There was actually a scientific study that they did about prayer and food at one point. And what they ended up finding is that whenever people prayed over their food actually contained more nutrition So something about it re-energizes the food. It's almost like the food like awakens, like it's more alive again.
Well, that's what I believe. I mean,
Because we're killing everything in the food,
you've got
like
all of our
modernly, with all the
processed food,
processing.
and they take it and they put preservatives in them because they want it to be on the shelf a long time.
Yeah,
And
which
that
kills everything in it.
not only kills it, but it preserves whatever that preservative is. And
Right.
now when you ingest that thing, it goes into your system and it's preserved. And I have a theory that some of that shit ends up being in there and it kind of camps out in your intestines somewhere. And
Yeah.
it's there forever and it's not leaving. All of a sudden, it's like a pearl, a grain of sand in a clam. It
Mhm.
starts growing. And I think that's where cancerous crap comes from.
I think that is one of the things that they probably will find as they're going along. But the science behind it is really fascinating, and how they've changed that idea about going from this old paradigm of the fact that we are this unique creature and we just have these little, we're a person, and we have all of these little tiny microorganisms that just live inside of us, but they don't have anything to do with who we are, but they're the cause of like diseases and things like that. Whereas the new paradigm is a holistic approach that we are actually all of these things all put together. And I think that it's going to be a much better way of posing our existence.
I believe that now. So, like, there are situations like if, okay, I take and bring in all these red dyes and yellow dyes and preservatives and all this processed crap into my system and I eat it. And I sit there and I go with positive intention. I want to get rid of all that. Eventually, I keep on eating all that crap. It's good. My intention's going to I'm going to lose the war because I keep on putting all that junk in there. I go, what the heck? I'll just eat a McDonald's hamburger with these fries that last 15 millennia. And I'm healthy now. Well, eventually it's going to go, no, you're not. We quit. We don't want to be your antibody no more. You're giving us too much work.
Right.
So you got to change it up and get rid of some of that stuff. So I'm not saying that you can just kind of, okay, I'm wonderfully healthy. Because I've got some stuff going on still at 67 years old, and my trip to Costa Rica and removing all those blocks, I've still got thoughts that come in my head. So I have to start intaking information from someplace other than where it is. And it's hard on social media because social media platforms thrive off of chaos and negative news. So it's really hard to go on there and find something good. You got to watch, who's that guy, Joe Dispenza, or listen to Greg Braden or Abraham Hicks, and try and get some good juju. But I'm always pulled away and go, I want to watch these people fight.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge.
It is a challenge. I mean, I think that what we bring into our awareness and what we bring into our bodies, all of it is all similar. I mean, that we in the Americas have a saying, you are what you eat.
Yeah.
And that actually comes from an old there's a few places it actually comes from, but it actually is an old Native American thing too. So they would tell you you don't eat any of the animals that are diseased. You don't eat the weakest ones. So that's for the animals. The animals will take care of that on their own. Everything else, sometimes they would kill them, but they would never eat them. So like if it was diseased and it was going to be something that was going to be bad for the environment, they might actually take it down because it's necessary, right? But they would never eat it. They would never eat anything that was sick or diseased or anything that was like anything that was too weak for them. They always wanted something strong. They wanted something virile, right? And they wanted it because they believed that whenever you take it in, you're taking in its strength, its power. So if you killed something that was weak, you're taking in that weakness. And that was the way they believed about it. And we are finding that that's actually very true. And when we're taking this food, right, modernly, we take this food, they're irradiating it. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff to it to make sure it is completely dead by the time we put it in our body.
Yeah, and then there's the legalities and how they go about labeling things to make you think that it's that way. So the box will have a nice, wavy grain. It's natural flavoring, which doesn't mean it's natural. It just means
Right.
that it's naturally flavored.
Mhm.
And some people read all that stuff. Well, you turn on the back because it's got all these things that the Food and Drug Administration says that that's got to have.
Right.
And then you got to read the teeny tiny fine print of what's really in there, and you still don't know what's really in there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, they can fib about it. Yeah, the one about the irradiation, that's one that actually really gets me, because they started doing this. I think it was like, what, 15 years ago or whatever. They're using radioactive isotopes, and they're basically beaming the radiation at milk. It was the common one that they started it with for a while, just destroying the milk, just totally breaking down all the milk. And they're like, oh, look, there's nothing alive in it. Yay. Let's feed this to people.
Was that the pasteurization?
It's one of the types of pasteurization that they have now. It's one of the types of pasteurization. And it's very insidious, because when you look at the label, the type of pasteurization that it is actually uses a green symbol as its stamp. It's like a green leaf surrounded by a green box. So you think like, oh, look at that, it's got a little green leaf on it, that's got to be natural. And then you go and you consume it, and come to find out it's actually nasty, gross, horrible, because they're just like, they irradiate it and then they want you to eat it.
Well, there's some
So
people
weird.
that talk about milk not being good for you because humans are the only ones that continue to drink milk into adulthood, whereas others wean off of it.
Right.
I don't know if that's true, is it?
I don't think it's true. It's extremely high. I mean, we've been doing it for thousands of years. This is not something that's been, new. If you go all the way back to even now, I know a lot of people are like, well, the Bible is just stories, right? But it is stories, and they're historical stories, and they've proven historical significance in a lot of these stories. So we do have to take it for what it is, right? Even if we're not talking about it in any other way. So in this particular case, you go all the way back, and they talk about the land of milk and honey. And they talk about some of these tortures they would do to people too, or the executions where they would take honey and milk and they would mix it together in large, copious quantities. And one of the ways that they would, send people to death back then is they would make them drink a whole bunch of that. And of course, everybody into adulthood back then was fairly lactose intolerant. The ability for us to continue to digest dairy into our adulthood is a new revolution. So it is still the majority of the planet that actually has some form of lactose intolerant once they get older. But it's we in the United States didn't always think that, because that particular gene followed us into the Americas. The people who actually came to the Americas, the Caucasians who came here during that time frame, all had the gene for being able to digest dairy. But yeah, you go all the way back. I mean, we're talking thousands of years, and basically, ancient Egypt, they talk about it, and they talk about these methods, like I was saying, the torture. Yeah, they would do that to them, and then they put them on a canoe and they push them down the Nile without anything, and of course the bugs would eat them alive.
That's not very nice.
No, it was really gross. But that was one of the things that they did. And they talk about it, but they talk about it like it's a paradise. The land of milk and honey is this like paradise that you go. So milk consumption, right, goes back thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands.
Well, it makes sense if you're consuming milk and you like milk and you have like pizza and a big cold milk and you're fine with it, then all of a sudden you got some issues with it, you stop drinking it.
Right.
Duh.
But you don't always know that that's what it is, though, modernly.
You kind of figure it out.
Well, it's really hard because they put milk in everything. They put milk in your bread. They put milk in this. They put milk in that. So, like, by the time that I figured out that I had a lactose intolerance, because I didn't develop it until I was older too, I'd lost a bunch of weight. I stopped digesting food. Even the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me because it was an adult onset, but it happened like overnight. Like I was fine, and then I wasn't fine. And I was like just getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and I wasn't digesting any food, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I had upper GI done. I had a lower GI done. I had all kinds of stuff done, and the doctors are like, I don't understand it. And then I had a random person hands a pamphlet to my best friend at the time. He passed away last year. His name was Bob. And they handed him the pamphlet, and he looked at it, and he goes, "That's interesting." And he looks through it, and it was about lactose intolerance. And he goes, "I think you might be lactose intolerant." And I'm like, no, my family's Dutch. There's no way. My dad's side of the family is Dutch. I didn't take that. I mean, my mom's side of the family is Dutch, right? There's no way. Apparently, that part of me did not take after my mom's side of the family.
But you figured it out.
It took after my dad's side of the family.
But you figured it out.
I did. But I'm so sensitive, though, that if they put milk powder in the bread that they make, I'll feel it. Like, it makes me feel ill. If I end up having like any type of lactose, like, and I'm not having like a Lactaid pill or something with it, I really notice it. Even sometimes with the Lactaid pill. Lactaid?
You take the pill so that you can have the lactose?
Yeah, so Lactaid has lactobacillus, I might be saying it right.
Well, why would you do that? Why don't you just listen to your body, and your body's telling you not to do that? And you say, I'm going to want to do it anyway, so I'm going to have one of these little pills.
Yep. Because my body still craves it. No, it does. I'm not kidding. I'm like, oh my God, cheesecake. Oh, it's my birthday. I'm totally going to have a cheesecake. I know I'm going to regret it. I need a cheesecake. I'm going to take the lactose. I got a piece of this Bass cheesecake that the wife makes, and I'm like, and I ate it. Oh, sure enough, the next day I totally
I've done that before, because as I get older, I can't handle the greasy hamburger and the French fries and the chocolate malt and a root beer.
Yeah,
that's a recipe for disaster for me if it's late at night. But
have you tried, since your regimen that I put you on?
Have I tried to do that, a burger?
Have you tried to see if your digestion is better?
I should check that out. Maybe I'll do that.
Because I gave you stuff that would increase the acidity of your gut.
Maybe that'll be my lunch.
Yeah.
I just quit drinking bubbles because it would make me irp up. And I figured it was just carbonation inside that it's forcing this stuff up.
I'm that way about carbonation.
Huh?
I said I'm that way about carbonation.
Yeah, I didn't used to be.
I've always been that way.
Sometimes I wanted one of those old-fashioned root beers,
When I was a kid, I know this is a funny story because it starts with kid and ends with beer, but when I was a kid, I was probably 14 years old, and I'm sitting there and having beer with somebody who shall not remain. No, it's been so long.
Anonymous?
Nobody cares. It was my uncle. We're sitting around and we're drinking beers, and I noticed that so my gut and my uncle's 6 years older than me. So just so you know, it's like an older brother for most people. So as we were sitting around doing it, I just noticed that the carbonation was always a big deal for me. So I did an experiment one time.
Negative big deal, or just you enjoyed it?
Like a negative. It was a negative big deal. So like the carbonation would always make my stomach upset. So I noticed if I was drinking a screwdriver, my stomach didn't get upset. But if I drank a beer, my stomach got upset. Even if I only had like 2 beers, my stomach got upset.
Would that be the same with like a carbonated beverage kind of thing, or like a kombucha?
So it was not as bad. It was not as bad with a carbonated beverage. If it was naturally carbonated root beer, I didn't have the problem at all. But CO2 carbonated, I tended to have a problem with those beverages. It would make me burp a lot. But with beer, because it makes you burp a lot and it's foamy on top of that, like it was really hard for me to purge the gas. So it would make my stomach upset. So I found out that very quickly that all I needed to do was just switch to alcohol, like whiskey or something like that. I could have a mixed drink. No problem. I didn't get sick at all. But beer,
the bubble intolerance.
That was not my favorite. I can drink beer now, but back then I couldn't drink it at all. And even still, if I drink beer and it's later at night, like I have to sit up for like an extra hour burping to get all of the gases out.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just quit drinking bubbles.
Yeah.
Even if sometimes if I'm at an event and you got this the fizzy water kind of thing,
Yep.
I'll take it and shake it up and try and get all the bubbles out of it, make it flat, just
Yeah.
to get the bubbles out. Because that's my problem with it. But I think I might try a cheeseburger and a malt today.
You should. I wouldn't do it late at night, but just see if your digestion is better because, you know, I gave you some vitamins in there that should have assisted with increasing the acidity level.
Acid.
Yeah. Yeah. So some of the studies that have been out there
acid.
recently, some of the, that's funny. So some of the studies that have been out there recently have actually talked about how a lot of people's heartburn and stuff like that is actually caused from low acid, not high acid, like they used to think.
What helped me when I would start feeling that is I just have a pickle, and then the vinegar would do something to the acids.
Yeah, increases it.
That worked good.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. I eat a lot of spicy food, and they say that for people who eat a lot of spicy food, that it actually helps their gut flora, so they end up being able to handle like cheeseburgers.
Well, that
and
might
things
be
like
another
that
reason
longer.
why, because I got a pretty strong gut, so it might, because I do spicy food, it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to have a strong gut until that illness I told you about, because it took them a year to figure it out, and I almost died of malnutrition. Like it
Ain't no fun.
I was bad. I was so skinny. People started rumors about me going like, I wonder if he's dying of AIDS. Like they totally thought I did, because I was pretty muscular. I was fairly darn muscular, and I went from being extremely fit. I mean, I'm talking about like military fit, or, you know, like professional athlete fit, to looking like I was anorexic and dying in a year's time. And it was just because I couldn't hold down any food. I just and it's funny because like one of the things they did is they said, oh, we got to put you on a brat diet, right? So it's bananas, rice, apples, and toast. It's brat. Bananas, rice, apples, toast. Those are things that people normally don't have a problem with.
I'd go out and get some brats.
Yeah, right. So bananas, rice, apples, toast would have been great, except that the toast had freaking milk powder in it. So I had no idea. So it was still making me sick. I didn't find out till years later. I mean, you know, well, it was about a year later. I figured out that it was, you know, that there was dairy in the toast. But oh my God, yeah, like so hard to stay away from.
So it seems like, okay, you had a whole meal there, then you have this powder that was in the toast. It seemed like a small amount, but it still affects that much?
It builds up. Like if all I'm eating is bananas, rice, apples, and toast, you know, you're going to have multiple pieces of toast a day, you know, and it affected me, but it was a buildup type thing. I'd be like, oh, I'm feeling a lot of a lot of acid reflux, and I'm just not feeling well. And then they gave me a medication too. They gave me, it was one of the very first pro pump inhibitors that they had out there, Prilosec. And they wanted to try it on me because they were like, oh, maybe you just have an extreme version of acid reflux. And so they gave me the Prilosec. Well, freaking Prilosec used lactose fillers. So I had no idea why I was still getting sick. They were giving me these anti-nausea pills and this freaking Prilosec. They used lactose fillers in the damn thing. So it was making me sick.
Well, it's kind of interesting that
it was so awful.
The big pharma stuff, a lot of it, the money they need is in research and development. And then they were using you as research and development.
They do. They use people as guinea pigs, and you have to pay for it. Yeah.
Hey,
well, look at what happened with the COVID vaccine. They basically used the entire world as a guinea pig. They were like, "Oh, I know. We have this brand new genetic editing type vaccine. You know you want it. Come on now. You want it so much, you're going to force all of your neighbors to have it too. let's do it. And then they did. And they injected it into millions and millions and millions of people, not even knowing what was going to happen. Oh, but we tested it. We did advanced testing on 100 people. Oh yeah, that's enough to inject it in the whole world.
That's a whole nother topic.
It is a whole other topic, but
It
it's
might
the
get
same.
my YouTube
It's
channel
also the
shut down.
same topic.
It is.
It's the same topic. The point is, like, we have to be careful about what we put in our body, especially if we think of ourselves as a macroorganism rather than just a single organism. We're not
We
a
do.
single organism.
I see a lot of people walking around still with masks and stuff, and I understand that they want to be careful and all that. My best friend Dave, he's got a big concern with the COVID-y stuff.
Yeah.
So I get it when you got all that fear and stuff. But man.
Yeah. There's a gal that is running for office in Crystal right now who is big into wearing her mask all the time. She wears masks a lot. Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, I don't get it. I really don't. Like, there's a few people I've met who are total germaphobes, and I've just never understood it, because the more exposure you get to germs, the less likely you are to get sick.
There's that.
Not the other way around.
There's that, and also the phobia, your mind goes into it, and you end up creating your reality by, oh, I hope I don't get COVID. What if I do get COVID? Oh my God, I'll get sick if I get COVID. Oh, I could probably die if I get COVID. I'll have to go in the hospital. It's going to cost me a bunch of money. And you started pulling all that fear stuff in there, and that's kind of what manifests.
Yeah.
That's the way it works, right?
Yep. I think so. But yeah, see, you were like, I don't know if we have a topic. I'm like, we can talk about gut microbiome. We're already talking about it. It'll be a good topic.
I knew that we didn't have a topic, but I knew we'd come up with something.
Yeah.
We've gone for 11:40.
11:40, yeah. Gut microbiome is a very potent topic. You can talk about that for a long time. There's people who are specializing in that now.
I'm sure there's people that specialize in everything. Is that what you're going to do?
What? Specialize in microbiome?
In the gut?
No.
No?
Not at all. No.
What are you going to specialize in?
I'm gonna stay with what I got. I specialize in metaphysical stuff and psychedelics.
So you're a metaphysical stuff specialist.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, my wife is my wife has been calling me a shaman forever, and as we have had topics about recently, you and I, we've talked about it, that it's a word that I'm leaning into. I'm getting very comfortable with that word now.
Well, you definitely shouldn't not be comfortable with it, because it's only a word and it gets charged. And back early, it had respect. It was like, oh, you're a shaman. You can help me. You're a medicine person, a medicine man, a woman.
Slight difference, but yes.
And now it's gotten to be like the word coach.
I know, everybody wants to claim the word. It's really funny though, because there's somebody that I follow on TikTok, or my wife does, I should say. I don't actually watch TikTok all that often anymore. I did for a little while because I was trying to learn things with her.
It's interesting. It's weird.
But yeah, but she watches it a lot, and there's this one person who she shows me regularly who has a very intense spiritual practice, and she was defining shaman, and she was talking about it, and she goes through all these different things about it. But the more and more that she talks about it, and the more and more qualities that she talks about, all the spiritual things and the types of weird things that happen to them, and all of the crazy challenges that happen in people like that, their lives, like all these things that happen to them. Mm-hmm. She was like, yeah, you don't want to claim the word, because claiming the word is like claiming the challenge. And she's like, yeah, she was like, not everybody survives to be old enough to be able to, have the experience to be able to do it like, the people that she knows does.
You got to realize that
herself.
Those things happen. My wife is a shaman, and she studied with, I can't remember the guy's name, Four Winds or something like that. I can't remember his name. But I saw stuff that was weird. I remember I was working on my house. We just bought a house in Golden Valley, and there's a friend of mine that came over, has helped me with some handyman stuff.
Yeah.
And he says, "So how do you like living in, how do you like living here?" I said, "That's really cool because we're right next to the nature preserves. There's all these deer and you see hawks and eagles, and there's albino squirrel that comes through here, coyotes, raccoons." And as I was saying that, I was going, I just lied to him. I've never seen a coyote here.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day I was working on my computer and I looked outside and there goes a coyote walking across. I mean, at first I thought it was a German Shepherd, but it had this big bushy tail on it.
Yeah.
And I go, I just manifested a coyote. And another thing that was weird that happened, because being with Monica, so all of a sudden, I'm not saying that she does stuff that gets the weather to change,
Yeah.
but I'm saying that the weather is changing at the same time she's coincidentally doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And bizarre, weird stuff happens. And then one day I walk out in the front yard and there's a flock of blue jays, probably 20 or 50 blue jays in the front yard.
Nice.
They don't normally flock.
Yeah,
but it was
don't.
weird. They were everywhere. And then when we first were looking at that house, I think I shared it with when we had Wes Hamilton on, the numerologist.
You said there was like 5 deer.
5 deer that were there, and they're staring at us. They're just sitting there in their posturing and staring at us. And then later we talked to the guy that was selling the house, and he said, I got one other guy that's interested in buying it, but he's checking with the city because he's a bow hunter and he wants to know if it'd be okay if we went bow hunting back there. And I thought, well, these deer want us to buy the house because it means their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
that's
I remember
interesting.
Monica had a situation where she called on the spirits to deliver a message, drop a feather or some kind of sign if I'm on the right path. And she went out for a walk in the yard and there was an owl feather. It was in the yard. I don't know, you can call it coincidence or whatever, but it's just too coincidental.
Yeah.
Eagles. We end up seeing a lot of eagles there, and the road that we're on is called Aquila, which is Spanish for eagle. And just cool stuff happens when you live with a shaman.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Elizabeth says the same thing. Yeah. She talks about that all the time. Yeah. It's really interesting because when this is before her and I even got together, she was like, she was talking to me about doing a vision quest and she wanted to, she wanted to have an experience and then like meet her spirit animal. So she'd been talking to me about it for a while and I'm like, and she's like, I think my spirit animal's a fox. I don't know. I have like a relationship with them. And I was like, yeah, I think it is too. I just had a feeling. I didn't know why. I just had a feeling. Yeah, I think it is too. And so I go and I'm sitting down with her and we're like going through stuff. And then she has this whole experience behind it. And then that night, a fox comes over to her window and starts to do that scream thing that the foxes do where it sounds like a female screaming. Ah, you know what I'm talking about?
I don't, but
there's a fox sound that literally sounds like a woman screaming. And it went right by her window and started screaming until she looked out the window. And then there's a fox just standing there staring at her. And I turned around and walked away. And so she had tons of experiences like that. I used to have that experience with crows all the time. And that's ravens are my spirit animal. But I don't live in an area where ravens are anymore. So it's all crows here. So then I started all the crows. Anyways. It's true.
I get a lot of experiences. Like I got a moonroof in my car. And I'm driving along and bald eagles fly over, sometimes close, but they fly over me.
Yeah.
As I'm going down the road, they tend to be in sight.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
That's cool.
I don't know. You can say, oh, it's just a coincidence or whatever, but
that's exactly what, certain types of spirituality is it's a marker of repeated coincidences over and over and over again that you learn to assign meaning to. And as you begin to assign meaning to these things, you become more connected with the spiritual world because it develops a language to talk to you.
I remember pre-Monica, I used to Lake Harriet Spiritual Community, where I was going to go to one of their services. It's over by Lake Harriet. And I was on the way, and I was at that time, I was really into the song, the Eric Clapton, If I Could Change the World.
Mhm.
And there's something in there. If I could be the king, would you be my queen, or something like that?
Mhm.
And I was listening to that on the radio. And then I was also thinking about, maybe someday I find a queen. And in front of me, a SUV pulls up in front, and the initials were KKQQ, some numbers after
Yeah.
it. King, king, queen, queen. So that was weird. And then I followed him almost all the way to Lake Harriet. I thought, my God, this person's going to pull in the parking lot. That's not what happened, but you never know. Maybe I wasn't supposed to go there. I should have followed that and see him at the Wedge Co-op or something.
Yeah.
So you got to pay attention to stuff like that. You never know what it is.
Right. Didn't you tell me something about during that experience that years later you found out that it was like Monica that you ended up like meeting at some point too? Like
I know that I've been at events with Monica.
yeah.
She used to go to the Cedar, and we used to go to the Cedar. She had come to my Healthy Life Expo back when Rick and I did it, before we even started Media Max. We started a Midwest Health and Wellness Expo at International Market Square, and she had come to that. So I'm sure we've crossed paths, but not being totally conscious.
Right.
You just don't notice that stuff. So there's things that are happening to you constantly. And if you're not willing and ready to accept whatever it is, like that fox that showed up, there's something more to it. You got to figure out what the hell was it screaming.
Oh, there is, yeah, and there's tons of communication that happens with the world around you. Like it happens to me all the time. So I'll be driving down the road, and then all of a sudden, like a crow will just fall and just go and land in an area that just makes me take notice. Oh, there's a crow there. Oh, the universe is trying to tell me something. Like I just know because literally flocks of them would follow me sometimes. I just know that that's the way that the universe communicates with me sometimes. So I just start paying attention, and it's just a trigger like, hey, pay attention, stupid.
I've
and
got
you're like, okay.
How much time we got now?
A little bit longer. We actually have 3 people on there. Hi, everybody.
Hi there. Microwave.
Yeah.
So I have a theory on that.
Microwave.
In that that the infinite, the universe is supposedly infinite. The alpha, the omega always is, always will be, forever.
Yep.
And molecules are finite. So eventually the molecule breaks down, turns back into energy, and then comes back as a molecule somewhere.
Yep.
So if the universe is infinite and molecules are finite, those molecules need to rearrange sometime. Sometime. So I think that's what it is when all of a sudden that crow ends up being there and there's something else that needs to line up. You just need to be aware of it. Oh, that crow means something. Oh my God, it was standing on a stack of $1,000. I should grab that. You never know what the heck is going on.
Right.
It's
true.
I think that's what deja vu is. When you have this feeling you've been somewhere, it's because you have.
I definitely have had deja vu in ways where it's been phenomenal. Like I've had deja vu while I was like sitting in a car with somebody having a conversation, and then I just stop and go, whoa, I've had this conversation with you before. And then they'd be like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, including this part. And then I would decide, and then they would be like, oh, and they'd say something back to me, and I would say it along with them. And then I would go yeah, and then I'm going to talk about this, and you're going to talk about this, and I'm going to talk about this, and now you're going to talk about this.
And then all of a sudden,
that is weird.
Then all of a sudden it disappears, and you go, what was that?
You're like, why? Why was I supposed to pay attention to that? That's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, life is so full of wonder and mystery that a lot of times I think people just let it pass them by without ever thinking about what they were really supposed to be paying attention to.
Let's talk about fate and destiny.
Fate, and we don't have enough time to talk about fate and destiny. We have 10 minutes. We got 10 minutes to talk about fate and destiny.
5 minutes on fate and 5 minutes on destiny.
Okay.
And in the universe,
how about fate? How about fate, destiny versus free will?
Destiny versus free will.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the same topic?
No. Because if fate exists, then free will is an illusion. And if free will exists, then fate is an illusion.
Yeah.
Because if you have free will, then how can you also have a destined purpose that you will approach?
Because it's the observer and the what's the other one? The wave particle.
Yeah, observed versus unobserved.
Yeah, it's that thing. So depends on what you're focusing on. If you're focusing on destiny, if you're focusing on free will or fate.
That's an interesting perspective of it. I like that perspective. That's an interesting perspective. Yeah, I totally believe in fate. I am a very fated individual. I have had a lot of things happen in my life that definitely drag me along a path. And even if I want to go along this path willingly, doesn't mean that I always know what to do. So my life has been marked with a lot of bizarre things that like don't even make any sense, that just drag me along a certain very specific path.
Well, that's where I think if you believe that your life is destined to be whatever it is, and it's fate, and there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm just along for the ride, then that's what you're doing.
Well, I don't know if that means that I'm just along for the ride. I mean, I'm definitely enjoying myself. Just because you're fated to save a kid from getting hit by a car on Saturday, November 22nd, right? I'm just making it up. But, like, let's just say that that's the case, right?
You just manifested and you got to do it.
Let's just say you're fated to do that, right? Doesn't mean that you can't choose to have a cheeseburger today.
Mm-hmm.
It also does not mean that, you can't be a magician.
Well, that's what I mean. I think that, like, the whole political thing, that's why I ride down the middle, because I get to choose. And a friend of mine that is now I don't know the difference between a preacher and a priest and all those different things, but he's less spiritual.
Kind of the same.
He's a religious guy. He always said, you can't sit on the fence.
I think there's some of us that can.
Sure I can.
I think some of us are supposed to.
Yeah, and that's where I am, because I have a belief that your experiences changes with the environment. With your mind, your belief will change with the circumstances around you. Like you're talking about that kid that you're supposed to save in November. You could be grabbing that cheeseburger and eating the cheeseburger while you're doing that. And the reason he's dying is because he's hungry, and you can feed him part of the cheeseburger. You just did both.
That's true. That totally could be correct. I told somebody that one time. I'm like, let's say you were destined to make a major impact, whether you were supposed to be president of the United States or whether you're supposed to be a homeless person. You can make the same impact on the people you need to make the same impact on. Mm-hmm. It just depends on what their perspective is.
Totally. You could be suffering, homeless, looking pathetic, and somebody would look and glance and go, God, that's terrible.
I don't want to be like that.
All of a sudden they'd go, but what if all of a sudden then they decided, I'm going to create this campaign, and there was a whole thing about helping homeless people. Just because he thought it was pathetic that the person was homeless.
Right.
And the homeless guy didn't even do anything, or the homeless girl.
Yeah.
They just sat there and made a statement.
Right. You never know how your existence is going to impact other people. But I think that that's a really interesting thing, is that we in the modern Western culture have divorced ourselves so much away from kind of that spiritual side of it.
Right. Trust the science.
Right. So I don't think that Westerners really realize how often these types of things happen to them anymore, because they just don't pay attention. I do. I pay attention, but also there's things that happen to me that
I do too. I'll tell you,
much like Monica, right? There's some things that happen to me that you just have to pay attention to.
I'll tell you a quick little story. It was, God, I can't even remember what happened. Oh, this is what it was. I was at my computer. Mm-hmm. And I think I might even sent you, MagicBradPresents.com. I did a sort of a chronological listing of things that I've done since birth.
Mm-hmm.
doing the magic shows in the garage as a kid, the muscular dystrophy carnivals, being a performer in high school, blah, 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 blah. And I remember there was a situation where me and a friend who used to do a lot of stuff in the trade show world. And finally we said, we should get an office. So we got an office at International Market Square. And what he did was he taught people how to be effective exhibitors at trade shows. So he had an effective trade show exhibiting seminar. And I helped him promote that. And I was writing that in there. A thing comes up on my phone of a messenger. My friend Lauren Daniels, that used to do the robotic mannequin thing. Right now I'm having a deja vu. Which is interesting. She said, Ron Eccles is in town. You should give him a call. He'd like that. So I called him up, and there was Ron. He was in town for some thing he was doing at the University of Minnesota. So that was weird that as I'm doing that, that coincidence pops up in Facebook Messenger.
Nice.
And there's Ron. And now I'm having this weird deja vu, like I already told you this.
I don't remember that story, but it's possible you did tell me.
You have to think back.
I'd have to think about it. I have to think about it. Yeah.
So we just experienced a reorganization of the molecules.
There you go.
And now it's gone.
Yeah.
Wild.
I think probably the most bizarre circumstance that you told me about that would actually be very interesting to people was that one that you had that was that out-of-body experience where you had that intense yeah, where you're just sitting there, you're talking to your friend, and then all of a sudden you're like, you don't know where you're at. You're just in space, and you're like, wow, oh, I'm out here.
It was weird too, because there was no form. I mean, there was like, it felt like I was like an orb or an energy. Like you ever see the full moon on a foggy night?
Yeah.
There's this haze.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. That was my being, and that was her being. And she wasn't a friend. She was just an acquaintance. She's from Madrid, and we happened to meet her. And she was writing a book about aliens. And we were going to go out to dinner. She wasn't going to go with us. It was just me and my friend and his wife. We were just going to grab something to eat. And we were just sitting at the table while they're getting ready. And I just disappeared. And it was weird. We were just talking like we're talking now. And then gone. And I don't remember if it was 5 minutes or 5 hours or 5 days or 5 years. It's just really, really weird.
Time didn't exist there.
Was no time. There really wasn't any space.
Yeah.
Again, it wasn't a circle orb kind of thing. It was like just an energy, and it dissipated.
See, now that's an experience. That's a pretty interesting one. Did you feel like in that space, did you feel destiny?
No.
Since we were talking about fate and destiny?
Because there wasn't a beginning or an end. There was no time kind of thing.
Oh, you were outside of all of the illusion.
And there wasn't even really a place. Because I said, where are we going? She goes, where do you want to go? So there really wasn't a place. And then when we were going to go back, I said, when are we going back? And she goes, whenever you want to go back. And those two questions were all of our communication. And this lasted for hours or minutes. I don't know. But it was just a weird situation because we were staring at each other and all of a sudden just gone. It wasn't like I was doing any breath work or any hallucinogenics or psychedelics or anything like that. I was just talking to somebody. And but Bali's a very, very magical place. Very bizarre.
That's cool.
So it's the most peaceful place I've ever been on the planet.
Nice.
I was going to move there.
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
And I found a place that was for sale for $10,000. It was a nice big space, and it had a little room to do like workshops and stuff in it. And it was called the Moon Palace or something like that. I was seriously thinking about heading out.
Yeah.
I didn't though. Anyways, I think we're done.
Yeah, I think so.
11:59.
Look at that.
If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.
Yeah, nobody on there right now to leave messages, but we would love some more stuff.
They might hear it and not chop it into shorts and put it up there. Someone might say something.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Be nice. I say that sometimes. So peace, love, and happiness. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be good. Be kind. Be nice. You hear what I said?
Peace out.